Welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you are new here, you're welcome, and if you're a returning subscriber, you're welcome as well. In today's video, we are going to learn how to cut a reversible jacket, and if this is something you love to learn, kindly watch this video to the end and make sure you subscribe. So here is my pattern, and the neck depth for the back is 1 inch. The neck width for the back is 3 inches. Neck width for the front is also 3 inches, and neck depth for the front is 3 inches. And my shoulder to shoulder measurement is 7 inches, and I will go in by 1 inch, okay, because you don't want your jacket to be popping out. All right, so I'll just mark 1 inch here. Now the length of this pattern is 15.5. that is, my half length is 15.5, and you're going to reduce your band allowance from it. Okay, if you want to use 2 inches or 1.5, just reduce it from it. And I've added sewing allowance to the shoulder and the lower part. So right here I'm going to mark my bust span, which is half of my bust span, which is 3.5 plus 1 inch, making it 4.5. So I'll go ahead and mark it, and also add half an inch for joining allowance, okay, sewing allowance I mean. So I'll go ahead and cut it out. So the next thing is to go ahead and use this to cut out the back, and after that I'll recut the front neck so that I can use this pattern to cut out the front pattern as well, okay. So right here I've used this pattern to cut out the back, and I'll go ahead and recut the front neck. Remember to add half an inch sewing allowance to the neck, okay. So I'll go ahead now and use this pattern to also cut out the front. Remember, the back is going to be on fold, okay. So here is my pattern paper, and I've used the pattern paper to cut out the fabric, and I'm using 2 different fabric since we are making a reversible jacket, okay. And here is the front, okay. So what I will go ahead and do now is to cut out the front into 2. So I'll also repeat the same thing for the other one. So you should have something like this, and the next thing I'm going to do is to cut out the peplum, okay. So this particular jacket, we are going to be cutting 720-degree peplum, which means you'll be cutting 2 360-degree peplum. So now for you to cut this, you need to determine your waist. So I'm going to be using my own waist, which mine is 32, and I'm going to be needing 1 inch on each of the peplum, so that makes it 2 inches. So 32 plus 2 inches, I will have 34, okay. So the 34, you are going to divide your waist divided by 2. So after dividing 34 divided by 2, I have 17 inches, okay. And the radius of a full circle is 6.28. So I'm going to divide 17 divided by 6.28, which is the radius of a full circle, and I have 2.7. all right. So for you to now know the length of your peplum, you need to minus your half length from your full length, from your full top length, okay. So my full top length is 22, and when I minus my half length from it, my half length of 15.5 from it, I have 6.5, okay. So what I'm going to do now, so for you to know how much fabric you will need to fold, you add 6.5 plus the radius 2.7, so that will enable you to know how much fabric you need to fold. So right now I've folded this fabric into 4, okay, and I'm going to be marking the radius 2.7. all right. So I'm going to be marking that radius 2.7 all around here. So after marking it, so from that radius, from that mark I made for the radius, I'll go ahead and take the length of the peplum, which is 6.5. okay. Remember to add half an inch joining allowance there. I did not remember to add my, but this is still fine. So once you do that, I'll go ahead now and cut this out. So after cutting this out, you're going to use this to cut out the remaining peplum, okay. We are going to be needing 2 peplums. So since we are using same fabric, since you are using different fabric, so you need to also cut out 2 peplum for the other fabric as well. So now I've cut out the fabric, and I want to create the curve at the front here. So what you do is make sure the 2 fabric are the right side are facing each other, okay, and then you go ahead and make this curve. So I've gone ahead to cut it out, and this is what I have after cutting it out. So I'm just trying to recurve this part. So right here I've gone ahead to iron my stay on the fabric, and I've also joined it at the shoulder, and I also use my my pressing iron to press all the seam open. Okay, so I've also done the same thing for the peplum as well. So what I'm going to do now is to go ahead and start sewing from here to the other side. Okay, and you are going to leave the lower part open, the lower part of the front and the back, you leave it open. Okay, because that's where you're going to be turning it from. So on this side you also go ahead and sew from this side to the other side, and you will repeat the same thing for the other side as well. So here is my peplum. I've also gone ahead to iron my stay, and I've joined the two peplum together. Okay, and I've also pressed open the seam allowance, so you can see the curve I have here. So what I will go ahead and do now is to sew this peplum together. So I'm going to use my hemming gum to sew this peplum together. So as I'm sewing, I'll be placing the hemming gum on it. The hemming gum will allow the fabric to stick together, so without any one of it popping out. Now if you want to use crinoline, you can go ahead and use crinoline. Just ensure that you are using your hemming gum. Okay, the hemming gum will allow the crinoline to stick to the fabric. So if you are not adding crinoline, the hemming gum is optional. Okay, but if you are adding crinoline, you need to add the hemming gum. So right here I'll just go ahead and cut off all the excesses I have, because I've gone ahead to stitch this together, and I'll cut off the sewing allowance. I'm also notching the front, and this is what I have. So I also notch the peplum as well. You can see I'm notching the peplum. Notching the peplum will allow you to turn the peplum out properly. Okay, you should have something, make sure you push it out properly, and once you are done, you go and catch the waist area, you catch it down. So right here I've ironed the bodies, okay, and I've also ironed the peplum. So what I will do now is to notch the center of the back bodies. Okay, you notch the center just as I'm doing, and you set it aside. So the peplum as well, you also fold it on top of each other. Okay, and after folding it on top of each other, you also notch the center. Okay, I've ironed this. You can see how neat it's looking. So you fold it together and also notch the center, and then you set it aside. So right here is my band. All right, and my band, you're going to use your waist measurement plus extra allowance for tying the jacket. So my waist is 32, and I added extra 40 inches to it, which means I'll be having 20 inches on both sides of the band. And I've also gone ahead to iron my stay on it. Now when I was ironing the stay on it, I folded this the band into two, and then I marked half of my waist measurement, which is 16, on both sides of the band, and that is where my stay stopped at. Okay, so the remaining part of the band, there is no stay there, which is going to serve as the rope. There is no stay there. All right, so this mark that I made there is also going to serve as where we are going to start stitching a peplum, or where the peplum is going to start. Okay, you place the notch part of the peplum to the notch part of the band, and it's going to be stopping at where I marked half of my band. Okay, so the other side of the band as well, you also place the notch part of the back bodies and then place it on it. Then where I have this half of my waist, you also place the front bodies on it. I'm going to show us how to do this so that you can understand better. So here is the notch part of the back bodies, and I'm placing it at the notch part, which is the center of the band. All right, the center of the band. So I'll go ahead now and use my pin to pin it down. So when that is done, I'll also bring the front bodies as well. Make sure the fabric are matching each other. Now where the stay stopped, remember where I said I marked half of my waist, that is where the front bodies is going to stop as well, and the rest will serve as the rope. Okay, so I'll go ahead now and use my pin to pin it down. So after pinning it down, I will repeat the same process for the other side All right, so I'll just go ahead now and use my pin to pin it down. So I'll repeat the same process for the other side as well. So you can see what I did. All right, so the next thing is to bring the other band and also notch the center of the other band. Everything I did on the first band is what I did on the second band as well. So now you place the notch part on the back bodies, so that means the back bodies is going to be in between the two bands. Okay, and then I'll go ahead now and stitch it all the way down on both. I'll stitch it all the way down. So right here, this is what I have after stitching it down. So the other side of the band, I also attach the peplum to it. As you can see, I've attached the peplum to other side of the band. You can see what I have here. So the next thing I'll go ahead and do now is to stitch the rope part. The side that is going to serve as the rope, I'll go ahead and stitch it. So the first thing I did was to close the opening part up like this. You can see, and then you go ahead and stitch this side down and you stop where you have the peplum. Okay, you stop where you have the peplum. So what I will do now, you also repeat the same thing for the other side of the rope. So what I will do now is to turn it to the right side and then place this pin on it and then push it back inside and go ahead to sew. This pin will allow me to turn the rope out, to pull the rope out after stitching. So right here, I've gone ahead to stitch it and I'm using the pin right now to pull out the rope. Okay, you can see what I have after pulling out the rope. I will do the same thing for the other side of the rope. If you don't want to do it like this, you can just go ahead and top stitch the band on top of each other. So the next thing to do now is to go and top stitch the remaining part that is open. I'll just place it on top of each other like this and then go ahead and top stitch. Like I said, for the rope part, if you don't want to sew it the way I did, you can just top stitch it the way I'm going to top stitch the remaining opening parts of this place. Okay, so I'll go ahead to my sewing machine now and sew the opening part together, and once I'm done, I'm going to use my iron to iron everything flat and smooth. This is the final look of this jacket, and I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please consider to subscribe to my channel. Make sure you like and share this video, and I'll see you guys in my next tutorial. Bye.
Bye.